Standing in front of an audience, whether it's a small group of people and you're delivering a presentation at work or to a large auditorium, it is something that fills many of us with dread, and it affects people in all kinds of ways. People suffer sleepless nights, they get crippling nerves, sweaty palms, jelly legs, heart racing, dry mouth, brain freeze, so you don't remember a single word of what you wanted to say. The list goes on. And no matter how hard you try and rationalise it away, it is such a deeply entrenched fear that it just remains. The fact is, however, that the chances are at some point in your career you will be asked to commit to a public speaking engagement. So what, if anything, can you do to combat this often crippling anxiety? If you need some help, then keep watching. Hi, Lesley Hornsby here. Welcome back to my channel where I focus on communication skills, coaching tips, using brilliant cutting-edge NLP techniques. Life coaching is all about leading a better, more fulfilled life by taking charge of your thinking, your emotions, and your behaviour. And if you'd like to know more, then obviously you just have to click subscribe. You'll get future videos on a regular basis. And if you think life coaching is something that might help, then I'd be happy to talk things through with you. You just have to use a link below that I've added to get an obligation-free telephone appointment. It's probably no surprise that when it comes to the fear of public speaking, you're not alone. This is commonly stated as the number one fear above everything else, even death. This notion was first popularised by Jerry Seinfeld when he stated that most people at a funeral would prefer to be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. And in 2001, a Gallup poll found that 40% of people were afraid of public speaking, second only to the fear of snakes. Of course, there's a lot of advice out there on how to deal with nerves in this situation. I mean, a favourite, which I'm sure you've come across before, is to picture your audience naked. And if you've ever tried that tactic, you know it's not really very helpful, or particularly appealing for that matter. Why then is public speaking one of our greatest fears? That feeling of nausea and anxiety when you stand to give a presentation or you walk to a stage, speech in hand, it's actually a recognised phobia known as glossophobia. Reactions to this phobia range from a mild case of nerves to intense panic attacks, your body and mind pitching you headlong into a flight or fight mode. This physiological response is rooted in our instinctive need to assess our external world in terms of dangerous versus not dangerous. Our more primitive brain assesses things like friend or foe, pleasure or pain, and is pretty much ingrained in our DNA. It's of course a throwback to a more visceral existence when our survival literally depended on choosing the right response to any given situation. The fight or flight response is our reaction to stress and floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol. If you've ever found yourself going blank, unable to form a simple sentence, let alone remember the content of a presentation, it all stems from your nerves because the cortisol in your bloodstream affects and interferes with your brain's normal activity. First and foremost, it's important to concentrate on the content of what you're saying. Unless you're a popular comedian or show person, your audience is usually assembled to learn something or receive information, and they're hoping you're going to deliver it in an interesting and comprehensible way and provide them with value in some way. The single most common error people make when contemplating making a speech or giving a presentation is their complete and utter preoccupation with themselves. Almost without exception, every delegate I have ever trained over the last 25 years has struggled with this. They're so busy worrying about what their audience is going to think of them personally that the substance of their speech or presentation basically becomes a secondary consideration. I mean, if you have ever, for example, before a presentation, found yourself thinking, I'm afraid I'm going to be judged and found wanting, and what if I bore people? What if I make a mistake? What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if they don't find me credible or they figure out that I'm a fraud? What if I'm asked a question I can't answer? If all that sounds a little bit familiar, I'm afraid to say you're definitely focusing on the wrong thing. It's very common, and in NLP it's known as catastrophizing, when you have an irrational belief that something is worse than it actually is. In the context of public speaking, it's often the case that you anticipate all the things that could go wrong to the point where you almost will them into reality. So, for example, you dread giving a presentation because you've said to yourself, well, I'm rubbish at speaking in front of people. I don't know how to present the information, and they're going to find it really boring. It's perfectly understandable and very human. People get hooked into this type of thinking as a defensive mindset, as if somehow that's going to prevent them from being hurt or avoid failure. The reality, of course, is that that kind of thinking, all that does is limit your opportunities in your life, your work, and your relationships. So, what are some of the strategies that you could try in overcoming this disempowering behaviour? Well, firstly, you might try to watch out for the times when you feel you're likely to start thinking negatively. Write them down, record the situation, how you felt at the time. You may then start to see that there is a pattern developing as to when you're drawn into catastrophizing. If you find yourself thinking the worst, just take a note of the thought, but then focus on your breathing, let the thought go. Refuse to allow it to develop or linger. Now, another tactic, which is something a life coach would encourage you to do, is to challenge your thinking. The best way to do this is to look for evidence that contradicts it from your past. Best of all, talking it through with a coach or a trusted friend is always a good place to start. Now, following on from this, it's a case of re-educating your thinking processes by using visualization and positive self-talk, both of which are techniques found in NLP, as well as cognitive behavioural therapy. And this entails learning to replace your brain's messages of fear with positive self-talk. Whatever we think about, our unconscious will endeavour to create. And if you think doom and gloom all the time, it's hardly surprising if that results in a negative outcome in your life. Now, much of the fear of failure can be mitigated with some very simple solutions. First and above all, know your subject matter. There is absolutely no better way to dispel some of the most basic concerns that people have when it comes to public speaking. Knowing what you're talking about, making it that much easier to express your knowledge of the subject matter and do it in a comprehensible way too. Great communicators are very adept at getting their point across when delivering any speech or presentation. If you do find yourself stumbling, just take a pause, a deep breath, regroup before picking it up where you left off. No one is expecting perfection. More than once I've used some light humour to shrug off a verbal mishap. And if you find yourself stumbling over the same place in your speech or presentation when you're rehearsing it, which you should be doing out loud by the way, then change the word that's catching you out. You have to test this out, as I say, by rehearsing out loud. Just saying it in your head will not cut it. Questions of believability, credibility, answering Q&A sessions, keeping these things interesting, all of this is a great deal easier if you know your stuff. Ultimately, all of this will make you sound much more confident, and if you should slightly lose your thread at any point, it will not blow you off course if you had a good grasp of your subject and you're very familiar with the order of your speech or presentation. So practicing out loud is a must. And let me just iterate one more time. Focus on your material and your audience and not on you. Another terror for people is silence. But actually, silences are a good thing. And yes, I'm absolutely sure about that. Just think about it. Chances are your audience doesn't actually know what you're going to say. And if your presentation is full of information, they are going to need time to absorb it. So not only would I say don't worry about silence, but I would actually advocate that you build it into your presentation or speech so that your audience has thinking time, and so do you. And speaking of audiences, you might want to bear in mind that a presentation is a means of communication, and it's worth considering whether it needs to be adapted depending on the kind of audience and the various speaking situations, whether it's talking to a group, addressing a meeting, or briefing a team. To be effective, step-by-step preparation and the method and means of presenting the information is something that you should be giving careful consideration to. If you build structure into your speech or presentation, it will help both you and your audience stay on track. Begin with a welcoming and informative introduction, followed by a coherent series of main points presented in a logical sequence, and finish with a purposeful conclusion. Being organised and prepared will help you limit your nerves, but if you do find anxiety creeping up, firstly, don't announce your nervousness. Frankly, it's a turn-off and your credibility will immediately suffer. It might not feel like it at first, but nerves are a good thing. It's a bit of adrenaline to keep your energy levels up. Some people go so far as to learn their speech or presentation off by heart. If that sounds a bit too much of a challenge, then I would advocate try memorizing just your introduction. Learn your intro. It will help reduce your anxiety and fear because you'll find you can begin with a little extra confidence. A strong opener will help captivate and set the tone for the rest of your talk, as well as give you time to find your rhythm and flow without having to concentrate too hard, which is not always easy when nerves are at play. And don't forget to visualize beforehand. To help you relax, you can try deep breathing through your nose and out through your mouth. And deep breathing causes your vagus nerve to signal to your nervous system to lower your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your cortisol. So just taking 10 deep breaths can assist with relaxation and provide a sense of calm. Now, some people find it helpful to tense their muscles and then relax, and you begin at your feet and rhythmically contract and relax each muscle group in turn, working your way up through your body to your head. An alternative is to find somewhere that you can take off your shoes and scrunch your toes and release. Sounds weird, but it does work. I'd also advise that you take some time to warm up. Find somewhere to try your opener out, and don't forget that's got to be out loud. Standing around waiting to present is just a way to make you feel more nervous. Finally, just a few do's and don'ts that will make things go a bit more smoothly for you. To begin with, just be yourself. Don't start by worrying if you're the person that you think the audience wants you to be. Another tip, use simple language. Technical jargon is all very well, but it's only useful if your audience is likely to understand it. Keep your tone normal, conversational. I've trained people in the past who started out by shouting at their audience because this was a subconscious attempt to sound confident. Don't be afraid to construct your speech or presentation using short sentences. Long, complex sentences will be difficult for your audience to follow and will end up bogging you down and may cause you to lose your thread. Remember, pauses and silences are your friend. Just resist the temptation to fill them with and ah. Keep the speech chatty rather than some grand oration. If you're faced with someone who seems to want to catch you out, for example, keep it cool. Don't definitely get defensive, and just be honest. If you don't know the answer to something, you say so and then follow it up with something like, I don't know that, I'll get back to you, I'll go and find out. Never ever blag. It's very easy to spot, and that will kill your credibility in a heartbeat. And it's useful to remember that this is probably the first time your audience is hearing your material, so don't assume it's easy and then fail to acknowledge problems or perceptions that they have in their mind. And one final note, rather than viewing this as another nasty task that you just have to do, approach it as something that's fun. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it does work. You may just find it becomes so. I've heard more than one person come back to me after they've had their training and say not only did they no longer dread giving presentations anymore, but they actually look forward to them. So there you have it. I hope this video has given you some insights into just a few NLP strategies and other tactics that you may find useful for improving your speaking skills and navigating your fear of speaking in front of an audience. NLP is about reprogramming your mind to focus on the positives and your personal strengths rather than the negatives. Preparation is key, giving you the confidence to deliver the information to your audience so that they want to hear what you have to say. And if you've got any experience of struggling with or perhaps overcoming fear of public speaking, then why not share it here by taking a moment to leave a comment. And finally, if you're stressing over an upcoming presentation or have to give a speech and you'd like some one-to-one help, then by all means get in touch. Use the contact link that I've added below to this video. And if you think life coaching is something you'd like to try, whether it's about working towards a general change in how you think or something more specific like dealing with mental blocks or limiting beliefs, then again, it's just a case of using the same contact link to make a 30-minute obligation-free appointment with me. For the NLP enthusiasts among you, I've also included a free guide to 3 brilliant NLP techniques that you might like to try. You just use the link below to download the PDF for that. Don't forget to click subscribe to this channel to get these videos because I post each and every week, and I hope you can join me again next time with help and advice on leading a more fulfilled life. In the meantime, thanks again for your company, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.